Hi, so thank you very much for that introduction, and also thank you everyone for attending this session brought to you by Modus Medical Devices. And so this webinar will be entitled End-to-End QA with the QUASAR Multi-Purpose Body Phantom, Treatment Planning Systems, and Stereotactic Body Radiation Therapy. So just so you have a face to put to this disembodied voice speaking, I'm Joanne, and I've recently come abroad to Modus as their application specialist. And so I previously completed my Master's of Science in Medical Biophysics at the University of Western Ontario, where my research primarily focused on the application of multimodality imaging in neurological and cardiovascular systems. And so right now I'm a bit more focused on clinical applications, helping with customer communications as well as the sales and marketing aspects for Modus QA. So before we actually begin the bulk of this webinar, I actually just wanted to first present some background on Modus Medical Devices in general. So we are located in London, Canada, where we specialize in the manufacturing of high-quality QA phantoms for advanced radiotherapy and medical imaging. And in total, we have actually been in this business for over 20 years now. And as a natural result of this, there are currently over 6,000 different Quasar Modus phantoms in use around the world, covering almost 4,000 different treatment centers. And displayed on the screen right now is actually just a small subset of our products, to which some of you might actually be able to recognize or even may have used before in the past. And from this small subset, you can actually see that our catalog of phantoms does span quite a wide variety of QA solutions, ranging from MRI and CT geometric distortion devices to 3D dosimetric solutions, and as well as machine targeting and motion QA, which a couple of which we'll be covering as the subject of our talk today. But no matter the QA device or product, most importantly, we're actually quite committed to working with physicists in order to provide the best solution on the market for the QA needs. And so we do believe in constant communication and the building of long-term collaborative relationships with these physicists. And so that's all in order to develop the best products in the market in order to help them fulfill their responsibilities with the utmost confidence. And as a natural consequence of this, will provide the best outcomes for the patients as well. Now, getting back to the actual topic at hand, the subject of this webinar is the performance of end-to-end QA with the QUASAR Multi-Purpose Body Phantom, where we'll be actually tackling quite a few topics. So first off, we'll be broadly going through an overview of the general radiation therapy process, focusing on the importance of end-to-end QA comprehensive testing for our institute systems, whether that be from simulation to treatment planning systems, and lastly to validating the accuracy of the treatment delivery systems. And following this, we'll also briefly go through the escalating need for both dosimetric and non-dosimetric evaluations with those RTP systems. From there onwards, we'll also have a little chat about Modus' solution to all this comprehensive testing, which is the QUASAR multi-purpose body in itself. So relaying more information regarding the Phantom design, its large library of interchangeable inserts that can actually help facilitate this wide variety of possible tests that one can actually do with the Phantom, and also how these testing features can possibly be applied to the QA workflow of any SBRT treatment. And in the end, we'll round this all off by speaking about the MP body's additional ability to support both SGRT QA and 3D motion management through two options, either the QUASAR Respiratory Motion Assembly or the QUASAR Respiratory Motion Platform. And so, as you probably already know, the clinical radiotherapy workflow is a complex and multi-step process designed to accurately deliver a biologically effective radiative dose to the target while still sparing as much neighboring normal tissue as possible. And so, very broadly, this process consists of a simulation device in which the preliminary X-ray or CT scans are taken so that the margins can be contoured for both the OARs and the target, and that the tumor volumes are also delineated. Thereafter, you have the treatment planning system, where the ablative doses are prescribed and the treatment plan is created accounting for that dose distribution as well as its constraints. And finally, a treatment delivery unit, in which the treatment plan is transferred into quite often a LINAC, and upon verifying the patient position, the dose is then delivered with very high degree of accuracy. And so all these steps are equally important, and all whose machinery systems are participating in these steps are also required to perform with a high degree of accuracy and reliability. And in fact, in a SRT study by Cervalli et al. In 2015, they actually observed that while the errors in each individual RT step is relatively low, i.e. the average errors resulting from image registration, target delineation, treatment planning and delivery process all individually did not exceed 0.5 millimeters, its culmination actually resulted in expanding the GTV-PTV margins by 2.8 millimeters in all directions, which, considering that this was done in the brain, can possibly make or break the RT treatment success. And so from this, it can be said that the overall accuracy of the RT process can depend on the accuracy of each individual step, hence leading to the development and now the increasing popularity of end-to-end testing. And so end-to-end testing is just broadly where all aspects of the RT workflow are evaluated in order to measure the overall geometric and dosimetric accuracy of the treatment planning process for an ideal patient. And so it can be understood that routine end-to-end QA is not only imperative for ensuring that errors and uncertainty are detected, but also that the physicist can have a higher level of confidence in implementing the treatment without fear of any catastrophic adverse effects. And so this type of QA procedure is actually of particularly importance in stereotactic body radiotherapy, where very high doses are delivered in a very few fractions to small extracranial targets. And so the margin of error for SBRT is significantly smaller than that of conventional radiotherapy because due to this high dosage and hypofractionated treatment style, a small error in target localization for any one fraction can actually risk the undertreatment of the tumor by 20% or more. And in contrast, an inadvertent overdosage of adjacent healthy tissue could actually escalate the risk of serious injury to a much larger degree than if you were to compare that to an equivalent treatment error in a radiotherapy course where there's substantially a lower dose per fraction used. And so it is actually quite understandable why special attention to the QA of SBRT protocols are especially required, and also why several regulatory bodies and committees such as the AAPM or the IAEA do continuously recommend a robust end-to-end QA process for all aspects of the radiotherapy workflow be routinely implemented. So historically, most QA efforts tend to focus on verifying the dosimetric aspects of both the treatment planning and delivery systems. These can include these very typical QA procedures, such as testing the functionality of the 3D dose calculation algorithms, assessing the inhomogeneous density correction, analyzing the dose distribution displays, or just validating the treatment plan implementation system in general. However, it should be noticed that over 3/4 of the code in the RTP system and essentially all the code in the virtual simulation software of the CT sim is actually devoted to the non-dosimetric features of their respective systems. And from this, we can preliminarily discern that while dosimetric validation is undeniably an important aspect of the QA process, it should also not be the only testing parameter to consider. And so non-dosimetric testing has actually increasingly become an important aspect of routine radiotherapy QA protocols, actually to an extent that an entire section was dedicated to it in the AAPM TG 53 report that was entitled The Quality Assurance for Clinical Radiotherapy Treatment Planning. And so while the assessment of both dosimetric and dosimetric testing is in good practice in order to undergo, from just this sample list that we're seeing on the screen here, it is quite understandable that the expanding repertoire of QA evaluations to complete can be daunting for some physicists, and especially if it requires individual phantoms or specific QA tools to test these attributes, as it can not only increase the financial burden onto the hospital budgets, but also possibly increase the length of time that the physicists would need to dedicate to just QA after hours. And so Modus' solution to this is the QUASAR Multi-Purpose Body Phantom, which for the remainder of this webinar you'll hear me abbreviated to MP Body in short quite a few times. So the MP Body is a flexible QA tool designed to perform a plethora of both dosimetric and non-dosimetric tests on RTP systems and CT simulators, but most notably all within a single phantom. And the way it does this is through its extensive library of inserts and test subjects that we've been continuously adding to in order to keep up with the ongoing advances in both treatment systems and QA technology. So there's a few displayed on the screen right now, but we'll be going more in depth into the entire library a little bit later for the rest of this webinar. And so what this means to both us and you as a user is that due to the versatile nature of the MP body's design, the body oval is actually able to stay in place, with only a quick change of inserts being required to prepare the phantom for the next set of tests. And it is because of this ongoing adaptability that is actually able to execute the commissioning requirements for treatment systems established with both the AAPM and the IAEA, and as well as published the pass-fail criteria for quite a number of tests in both the TG32 and TG66 reports. And with added motion capability, it's also able to align itself with the TG76 report recommendations. So knowing its capabilities, let's go a little bit more into the actual phantom design. So anatomically, the QUASAR MP body consists of a relatively large body oval that's made entirely out of clear solid acrylic. It measures at around 30 by 20 by 12 centimeters with this pseudo-anthropomorphic shape, as it's meant to resemble the size and shape of a patient's thoracic cavity. And within that body oval, there are actually these large cylindrical openings that measure around 8 centimeters in diameter that lie at the center and the lateral left and right positions. So this allows for the phantom to actually be fitted up with 3 large inserts simultaneously, allowing for more possible deaths to be conducted all at once, and thus resulting in a more efficient and faster acquisition of your QA results. And so it should also be noted that these cylindrical insert sizes are optimized for the very smooth and easy insertion, and as well as it can also allow for the inserts to rotate 360 degrees within the openings, thus allowing for added variability in, for instance, if you had an offset tumor, you can just stick it in at any sort of orientation. And in addition to this, there are actually also 4 smaller openings measuring around 2 centimeters in diameter scattered around the body oval, located here, here, and here. And so they are primarily designed for extra possible ion chamber locations, and they are indeed compatible with quite a variety of commercially available ion chambers. It should actually be noted that with the exception of these 4 smaller diameter holes, the phantom body is perfectly symmetrical in the X, Y, and Z directions, meaning that if you were to theoretically turn the phantom 180 degrees, one will actually be able to have access to a total of 12 possible ion chamber locations, all available for your liking. However, a specific location to note are the ones that are located at the spine or bone placement here, and this actually allows for the user to select a more appropriate spine depth for your patient plan, and thereby providing a little bit more customizability in testing an actual given SBRT treatment plan, but we'll be touching upon this a little bit later. And so there are also extra laser and light field alignment markings on both the superior and lateral surfaces of the phantom. This allows for not only the QA of the CT suite room or laser scanner and light fields, but upon verification, it can also allow for the really fast and precise positioning of the phantom at the isocenter. And lastly, each MP body also comes with an electron density ring feature that features around 5 tissue emulating ED rods for CT number to relative electron density conversion calibration. So we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next slide, but I did want to point out that the ring is completely removable. So if you have already completed the testing and do not want the ring to take up an insert opening slot, you can just simply remove it in order to approve access to more ion chamber locations. And of course, the tissue ED rods are also removable and interchangeable as well. So, as I have said before, the adaptability of the MP body primarily stems from the extensive library of inserts that increases the variety of tests that one can perform all within the same phantom body, offering a much more cost and time efficient solution for the physicist's comprehensive QA needs. So we do offer quite a large variety of inserts, and on the screen right now you are seeing quite a select portion of them. But unfortunately, due to time constraints, I am unable to go through the entire library with you. So if you do have any questions regarding any of them, please do check out our website at modusqa.com or just contact us directly for a more in-depth explanation. But of the ones that we have on screen right now, first off, you have the electron density ring, which houses a series of 5 different electron density inserts, whose relative electron densities mirror that of the lung and inhalation, the trabecular bone, the dense bone, a water equivalent, as well as polyethylene, which does have similar attenuation values as to the thyroid. And so this apparatus actually allows for the calibration of your CT scanner because even qualitatively you can quite easily discern the attenuation differences between each of the materials. But in addition to this, one can also validate the CT council value to relative electron density conversion algorithm in your treatment planning system, which is definitely needed in any CT SIM QA protocol. So next up is the 60-degree Air Wedge, which consists of 3 high-contrast Delrin spheres of varying size. And this is all embedded into a half cylinder of air cut across the long axis at a 60-degree angle. And it's actually because of this high contrast air acrylic interface along the scanning axis that allows for the Delrin sphere volumes to be particularly susceptible to partial volume effects, and therefore allowing physicists to be able to determine the accuracy of their target volume calculations under very similar circumstances. So target volume calculation accuracy can also be evaluated with the 20-degree air wedge insert below, but this time since it contains 2 small diameter rods, physicists will be able to determine the volumetric calculation accuracy for a much smaller cylindrical shaped target rather than spherical. This is also particularly useful in determining the geometric accuracy of patient anatomy in a 3D viewer. However, most notably, because this insert also does contain this air wedge located between the 2 rods, as you can see here, you're actually able to assess their automatic margining tool by simply just creating a 2 cm margin around the air wedge and then checking to see if it actually matches the phantom geometry. So the next insert actually isn't shown on screen right now, but it is the last cylindrical insert that I wanted to speak to you about, which is the 27 cc acrylic within the 125 cc Delrin cube. And so the insert's property essentially matches the name exactly, as it's a cylindrical insert that contains a 3 by 3 by 3 centimeter acrylic cube that sits within a 5 by 5 by 5 centimeter Delrin cube. And so while this insert can be similarly used to assess the accuracy of the auto margining tools, the 3D displays, and the volume calculation algorithm, it can importantly also be able to assess the accuracy of the dose volume histograms of the treatment planning systems, as you can just simply compare the dose and volume estimates determined in the TPS system with the true volume of the Delrin or the acrylic tube. But in the circumstance that you wanted to do a manual calculation for this, the simple cuboidal configuration of the insert analog can also allow for this quite easy manual calculation and comparison to the TPS system if you so choose. So lastly, in terms of the non-dosimetric insert, CT scanner image quality can also be assessed with the optional spatial resolution and slice profile insert. And what it is that it's an acrylic cylindrical insert that contains an array of holes on the bottom that allow you to measure and quantify the line pair resolution. Additionally, it also contains an aluminum plate that's set at a 45-degree angle within it that will help assess measure a slice profile. So we do actually offer a wide variety of inserts that allows for treatment dose and delivery verification. And the first among them is this wide variety of cylinder inserts that can either be drilled for an ion chamber or at least have a tumor model that can be either centrally or offset within them. And so as an example of one here, it's a split cedar insert, and it does indeed have an offset tumor model placed inside them where you can place a piece of film inside for dosimetric assessment. And so if you were to plan a treatment for this type of tumor volume, you definitely have the option to verify the dose like such. And so the same idea of the ion chamber holders can also be applied for non-cedar inserts as well. For instance, this one here is made out of acrylic shell, and similarly, you can have the ion chamber drilled to your specification. So next up, we actually do have film cassettes where you can place a piece of film inside it if you want to assess the 2D dosimetry of your plan. And so this was originally designed for light-sensitive films such as pre-EBT3, hence its dark color. However, that being said, we do offer other varieties of films such as chromic and many others ones as well. You just have to inform us of your specification. And so lastly, I also do want to highlight that we offer multimodality testing capabilities with the MP body as well. And upon using the PET-CT insert, physicists are also able to place any radio tracer or select liquid into the select volume that's suspended into the center of the insert. However, in a circumstance where testing requires a slightly larger volume, the hollow cylindrical insert is designed so that you can fill the entire volume with any solution that you want. However, interestingly, the hollow volume insert is also large enough that you can place any mini phantoms within it for motion tracking purposes as well. So that basically sums up most of the inserts within our library. However, in the circumstance that you do have this phantom and you don't see the insert that you want, you can definitely just ask us because we do provide the option for customers to customize or even just build specialty inserts if you have a specific design in mind. And so, in summary, what does this mean in terms of the MP body's analysis capabilities? Well, with the combination of the comprehensive insert library and the phantom body in general, physicists can perform quite a wide variety of QA testing, both dosimetric and non-dosimetric. So, in terms of the non-dosimetric evaluations, I have taken the opportunity to list out a few tests that can be conducted with the MP body, although a few of them we have spoken about before in the previous slide. So to start us off, you can assess the accuracy of your 2D and 3D measurement tools that are used to calculate target volumes with the 297cc acrylic and the 125cc Delrin cubes. Similarly, boundary identification and auto-conjuring and margering capabilities can also be tested with the 60-degree and 20-degree air wedges, in which you can actually increase your testing capabilities by checking for your system's ability to compensate for these types of partial volume effects at the same time. So a couple of other evaluations with the MP body can include testing the patient contours for accurate representation and anatomic accuracy, checking for reconstruction errors as you convert your data from list mode to your 2D or image slices, evaluating your dose volume histograms at almost 12 different locations within the pseudo-anthropomorphic body phantom, and that is primarily due to the sheer number of possible ion chamber locations. And of course, you can also use the removable electron density ring with those 5 tissue-like ED inserts, and with that, you can validate the CT number conversion algorithm in your planning system. However, what's also particularly interesting is that since all these tests can be done within the same body phantom, you can also directly check your image's conversion or transfer process along the way. And although not commonly occurring, computer errors stemming from improper image transfer, storage, or DICOM retrieval can accumulate and amount to improper target volume identification. And of course, with that improper target volume identification, it can eventually lead to inaccuracies in treatment planning and possibly over or underexposing the patient with the radiative dose. And so one way to test for this concern is to just compare the dimensions of the phantom on the imaging, simulation, and treatment planning interfaces, and then compare the dimensions of all of them. And so it seems like a relatively simple addition to any QA workflow that can result in 3D radiation treatment planning that can be implemented with a greater degree of confidence. And so as for the dosimetric evaluations, physicists can actually take advantage of the shape of the phantom as well as the multitude of ion chamber locations in order to verify their treatment planning and delivery system's dosimetric attributes. This is actually particularly important not only to validate if the correct amount of treatment dose is being delivered to the target volume, but it can also simultaneously assess the dose distribution throughout the irradiated region, well, given that you have access to multiple ion chambers. And so theoretically, with well-placed ion chamber locations, you can actually determine dose exposure in regions of high dose exposure such as the target or the surrounding low tolerance OARs such as the thyroid, the spinal cord, and the ipsilateral lung. And so in addition to this, physicists also have the option to fill the phantom openings with completely blank acrylic rods and inserts in order to provide a testing environment where homogeneous density dose measurements can also be performed. Yet, in contrast to this, seeded insert series that we talked about previously is also available for use, so physicists can also verify the density correction in an inhomogeneous environment as well. However, something to note is that because all of this is done within this pseudo-anthropomorphic phantom, whose features really closely resemble that of a human thorax, it can provide the most clinically relevant information to the physicist, so that information can be directly applied to adjust their treatment plan accordingly. So now, as we're beginning to understand the testing capabilities of the antibody, one might be wondering how do these features directly apply to the SBRT-type treatment plan verification? Well, as an example here, the MP body can support SBRT-type treatment QA in two different scenarios. The first of which is that it can be used during the commissioning of your treatment planning system. And for this, the phantom is being used as a patient analog, and the treatment plan can be made around it with a specific test question in mind, whether that be to verify the contour corrections, or even just the treatment of inhomogeneities during those calculations. And so it really does speak to the flexibility of the MP body as it allows for multiple tests to be run on it during commissioning, and by imaging the phantom multiple times, the physicist will actually be able to evaluate and verify machine accuracy for each commissioned radiation beam separately. And secondly, the MP body can also be used to test new treatment techniques prior to actual clinical implementation. So in this type of situation, a phantom is planned and then treated like a patient, with his dose measurements being compared with the expected dose distribution. So in this type of situation where, for instance, you were planning a type of SBRT on a patient with a lung tumor, as you can see on the left-hand side here, the 9 ion chamber locations might be particularly useful as the physicist will be able to place ion chambers in all these yellow circles right here, as you can see on your right-hand side, and then verify all those points simultaneously. So one particular region of interest I do want to point out for these dose points is these two right down here. And those are the two optional locations for the bone rod that lie towards the bottom region of the phantom. And so we did touch upon this briefly before, and this is all particularly important because spine depths can vary quite significantly from patient to patient, being affected by age, physiology, BMI, and quite many other factors. And so by taking that into consideration, this will actually allow the user to select a more appropriate spine depth that will best fit the given treatment plan, and thus better depicting adverse radiation exposure to the spinal cord, and conversely, potentially improving patient outcomes. So additionally, the MP body phantom can be used to verify patient-specific plan dosimetry, hence allowing the physicist to better adjust their treatment plans for each individual patient and also being able to deliver the treatment with a higher degree of confidence and accuracy. And so generally the process to do this includes transferring the individual treatment plan onto the phantom geometry, and then the resultant dose distribution map is then recalculated in order to determine the dose expected at each select measurement point in the same phantom with the same beams that were applied onto the patient. And so in an ideal situation, the dose distribution between the two plants would be identical. However, this is generally not the case, as it results in a slight difference between the two distributions, which would then inform the physicists that slight adjustments are necessary. And so on the screen right now, you can actually see an example of this, where on your left-hand side, you'll actually have an intensity modulated arc treatment plan map for a patient with prostate cancer, in which we transferred it over to the MP Body Phantom with acrylics inserts, as depicted on your right-hand top side. And so this situation, the target volume lies within the center of the patient, in which it would be probably best to set up the phantom with this in mind in order to mimic the patient plan and then place the ion chamber at the center location, which is depicted by that yellow circle. So thereafter, the dose distribution can be easily recalculated for the same beams applied to see if there's actually a difference. Granted, while this process will depend greatly on the treatment planning system as well as the target location, you can see that the MP body is definitely capable of aiding in patient-specific plan dosimetry verification, which can in turn help with that TPS process in general. And so, due to increasing technological advances, especially with in-room imaging, a possible consideration for SBRT is the implementation of a motion management strategy, as without motion management, treatment volumes that were so well defined and verified with the MP body during that treatment planning process might actually need to be significantly increased in order to compensate for the possible positional and anatomical changes with patient respiratory motion, and that can actually cause unnecessary radiation of healthy tissues. And so by using some type of 4D IGRT method, you can actually track the tumor motion rather than expanding the clinical target margins, hence increasing the dose that's actually going to the tumor, which is a major caveat of the SBRT process. And so with that principle in mind, the MP body can actually be easily converted into an IGRT motion phantom with the addition of the QUASAR Respiratory Motion Assembly or the QUASAR Respiratory Motion Platform. As both motion simulation devices are compatible with the MP body, it effectively allows physicists to add this multi-directional 3D motion simulation testing to their end-to-end QA protocols in both a cost and time-efficient manner. And so for the remainder of this webinar, we'll actually be going through the motion capabilities of both platforms as we compare and contrast both. So first off, we actually have the QUASAR Respiratory Motion Phantom, which is the system you're seeing on the screen right here. And this is actually a breathing and patient motion simulator that's designed to move any phantom, whether that be the MP body or any of your own existing phantoms that lie under 20 kilograms. So specifically, it's actually able to move the phantom following programmable respiratory and sinusoidal motion profiles for patient-specific QA. And how it works is that you simply set your MP body onto the moving platform, where it can be filled with as many inserts and ion chambers as you wish, and then afterwards, the motion platform will apply an external steady-state breathing-like motion to the entire phantom, as it moves in the anterior and inferior direction, back and forth like this, or perhaps with some degree of twist, if that's what you so choose. So one particular thing to note is that physicists can also control this multi-directional motion ability either from the laptop or software itself or locally right at the phantom interface. And what this means is that there is actually the ability to either fully program your motion through the software by importing patient respiratory waveforms directly into the system, or even creating your own, as you can see in the screen in the back, or physicists can make the adjustments to the amplitude and speed directly at the phantom interface in itself, thus allowing for easy accessibility and modification to the amplitude and speed without the need to constantly jump back and forth to the computer. So just a little bit more detail regarding the actual motion options associated with the motion platform. So as I've mentioned previously, the motion platform is capable of locally controlled programmable translational motion, in which a physicist can import patient-specific waveforms or create their own waveforms using the wave editor tool. And in total, it's actually designed to move the cylindrical inserts in the anterior and posterior direction at user controllable speeds and amplitudes, granted with an upper limit of 60 beats per minute for its motion frequency, and a maximum waveform amplitude of up to 40 millimeters. And so the highlight of this motion simulator is actually that they are able to play back these waveforms with a very high degree of resolution at around 10 milliseconds, which basically means it's capable of repositioning the translational stage with its motor at almost 100 times per second. So this is actually particularly useful in oscillation mode, in which the phantom motion is controlled by the software, as theoretically you can change the waveform shape and then the motion will adjust in real time in under 10 milliseconds. And so in addition to this mode of operation, there's also positional mode, in where the physicist can hold the phantom at a very select position. But the software feature that I actually really want to focus the most on right now is this deep inspiration breath hold mode. And so what this deep inspiration breath hold mode does is that it provides efficiency for physicists that like to use a breath hold technique in their treatment protocols. And simply you just have to click that green breath hold button on the right hand side towards in that window, and the phantom will automatically simulate the breath hold, which is particularly useful to facilitate the testing of gating systems. And so we are actually the only company that offers this integrated feature with the Motion Phantom. And an interesting anecdote of how this actually came up is that this software feature was actually developed in response to a physicist's request for an easy way to automatically simulate breath hold. And since they asked for it, we delivered. And now it's actually become a really popular tool within the software. So I actually just wanted to bring this up because it does speak to Modus's commitment in helping physicists. So just like the MP body inserts, if there's not a feature or an insert that is offered at this current time, please do let us know and we'll be more than happy to help work something out. And so another feature that I wanted to highlight for the motion platform is the hysteresis generator. And so by definition, hysteresis motion is the term used to describe the difference between inspiration and expiratory compliance, which in terms of breathing motion provides that twist in the breathing motion waveform so that there's a varying pathway during the patient inhalation compared to the inhalation, as you can see on that graph in the right hand side. And so with the motion platform, you can actually provide physicists with the option of adding hysteresis motion to the phantom or tumor model by providing a slight twist to that translational pathway, and thus causing asymmetry between the motion of the phantom in which is moving into that anterior direction, and then that motion when it's moving back in that posterior direction. And so in total, the motion platform can actually create lateral hysteresis to up to 1 centimeters in amplitude for phase separation tests. And so it's actually quite easy to adjust the degree of hysteresis applied, as all you really have to do is just simply reposition one of these pins into any one of these channels right here. And then it will just mechanically change the lateral amplitude of the motion waveform, hence providing that iconic twist with the hysteresis. And so this mechanical adjustment to the phantom motion is actually quite easy to do and also remains quite accurate, as the resultant motion of the phantom and tumor surrogate is actually quite similar to the lateral motion of the tumor expected within the patient's body. So in general, not only does the motion platform accessory provide that translational respiratory motion to the MP body platform, phantom, but it can also provide another dimension of motion outside of that 2D standard translational motion with the hysteresis generation cap. So in terms of motion management, as I've introduced a few slides ago, Modus actually offers two options, the motion platform and the respiratory motion assembly, which is this motor and control box and insert setup that you're seeing right here. And so this insert is actually fitted into one of the cylindrical openings of the MP body and will provide that motion internally to your chosen insert, as in that motion will be occurring within the static MP body's body oval rather than moving the entire phantom with the motion platform. So I do want to note that assembly can be fitted into either of the three cylindrical openings of the MP body, meaning that the area of motion can occur either laterally or in the center at the middle of the oval. And so within this current motion, the area of motion, which is the cylindrical insert here, was chosen to occur laterally on the side of the phantom. And so during operation, it will be providing this motion inside the phantom like such, which is this 2D translational motion or perhaps even 3D rotational motion, which we will touch upon in a little bit later. So overall, the motor, software, and the modes of operations are the exact same as the motion platform, where it can still provide an anterior to posterior motion waveform playback in that supine direction with a high resolution of 10 millimeters per second. But this time, again, that translation motion is notably set within the solid body oval. And so this motion assembly is still equally capable of being locally controlled at the physical apparatus or programmable in which the patient-specific waveforms can be imported and then simulated within the actual software. And so moving on, here's actually an example of how the QUASAR motion assembly will look like upon being used clinically in an SBRT-type treatment scenario. And so on your left, you have a CT image of a patient diagnosed with a tumor in their lung. And just as you would plan for a lung SBRT treatment, you will want to apply different margins and then delineate a tumor volume in order to highlight the dose volume and distribution in order to achieve that successful treatment. And so you can actually check this treatment plan and emulate the simulation exactly, including simulating the patient's breathing motion with the MP body phantom and the motion assembly. And you can see on your right hand side, there's actually a fluoroscope of the gating session with the MP body and motion assembly. And that tumor motion you are currently seeing is the motion of this cedar insert, which has similar density to lung tissue, with that tumor model located insertly that's being moved in and out of the phantom body, hence mimicking that tumor motion that as the patient would breathe in during treatment delivery. And so, as the tumor will move in and out of the range of the treatment window, the beam will be turning on and off relative to its location, hence allowing physicists to QA their gating accuracy. And they can also validate its dosimetric accuracy by adding film into that tumor model or even just placing ion chambers around that tumor location in order to determine the precision of this beam. And so, in general, the motion assembly can add additional testing capabilities to the MP body and might actually be useful in providing further accuracy and confidence in this type of SBRT type of treatment that's being delivered. And so the last feature that I wanted to highlight for the QUASAR Respiratory Motion Assembly is its ability to add 3D rotational motion to the setup with the inclusion of the optional rotational stage. So instead of just having that 2D translational motion of the insert moving anterior to posterior, such as going in and out of the phantom body as you can see here, the optional rotational stage will actually allow for the insert to rotate as it translates. And as you can see in the video, it will translate and rotate at similar times. And so with a total rotation range of around 60 degrees, physicists can actually adjust this to this liking. You will be able to provide additional complex motion and expand the range of possible testing scenarios. So this actually might be particularly useful upon being paired with an off-center tumor insert or other geometric shapes, as you'll actually be able to map that possible rotational motion of the tumor within that pseudo patient body model. So seeing how Modus provides two options for IGRT motion management testing, summarily, what are the differences between them? Well, in brief, it usually comes down to the physicist's choice, in that they must decide if their QA testing question requires the tracking of internal or externally applied motion to their target volume. So, for instance, if a cedar insert with an offset tumor model was paired with either apparatus, both systems will be able to demonstrate that 2D translational breathing-like motion, albeit in slightly different formats. With the respiratory motion assembly option, the assembly is inserted into the phantom body, and due to this, the motion is isolated and confined to one of the openings of the phantom, resulting in only the insert being able to move in and out in that supine position while the rest of the phantom body remains static. Although, just as a note, the unique attribute of the motion assembly is its ability to add user-adjustable rotational motion to the insert, which actually might be useful in adding that realistic twist to the tumor motion profile as it better resembles the real clinical scenarios. However, what about the platform? Well, with the platform, the motion is externally applied to the whole phantom apparatus, meaning that the tumor model is moving in tandem with the rest of the phantom body. So this is actually particularly useful as none of the cylindrical openings with the MP body are being taken up and are readily available to use for other things, meaning that you still have access to all 12 possible ion chamber locations and you can still assess all of them while stimulating respiratory motion. So another unique feature that's associated with the motion platform is that you can use any phantom on it, given that it's below 20 kilograms in weight, and still be able to generate that motion profile for added testing capabilities. And in addition to this, another unique feature is the Hysteresis Generator, in which it can provide a twist that can be applied to differentiate between the simulated patient's inhalation and exhalation pathways. So all in all, both the QUASAR Respiratory Motion Assembly and the motion platform are both viable options to simulate respiratory motion for treatment planning and treatment delivery QA. It just really depends on your testing question in mind as well as your personal preference. And so the last thing I want to do right now is to highlight this vertical chest wall platform right here. And so currently, as there is an increase in the use of surface-guided radiation therapy, and that a lot of users do want to take advantage of these systems during motion management, both the motion assembly and motion platform actually have the ability to monitor the chest wall motion with this sensory. And of course, this actually does come fully included with both the motion assembly and motion platform system without any additional charges. And so this surrogate chest wall platform can actually accept any modification for any SGRT system, whether that be with the Vision RT, a CRAD, the variant identify, etc., all in order to help QA their tracking capabilities. And so since the surrogate platform is attached onto the actual motion system, it can actually provide corresponding information that correlates the chest wall motion with the motion of the tumor or the insert itself. So it's actually a pretty useful tool in bringing the aspects of SGRT into motion management in a way that can be used for gating. Okay, so in summary for today's webinar, we actually have covered quite a bit of the MP body and most importantly, what it can do as an end-to-end QA solution. So from just its basic setup along its side of library of inserts, the MP body is not only designed for dosimetric evaluations such as isodose calculation, deviate calculation, and dose delivery verification, but also a plethora of non-dosimetric tests because it can assess the accuracy of its 2D and 3D volumetric measurement tools and calculations, its auto-contouring and margining functions. It can assess image quality and profiles of their CT imaging system. It can also validate the CT number to electron density conversion algorithm system, and also validate its geometric accuracy of its image reconstruction process, along with a multitude of other things such as data transfer, storage, and retrieval of all DICOM tools across all your system plans. And importantly, upon being paired with a QUASAR respiratory motion assembly or the respiratory motion platform, it also has the ability for that multi-directional motion testing for motion management protocols, or even it can validate your SGRT tracking systems using the chest wall platform. And so while it is impossible to cover all the QA tests for simulation, treatment planning, and delivery systems, due primarily to advancing technological changes or just institute-specific differences in QA protocols, the QUASAR Multi-Purpose Body Phantom is more than sufficient in completing its role as a flexible end-to-end QA phantom fully capable of performing both dosimetric and non-dosimetric tests on radiotherapy systems. And so that brings us to the end of this webinar. So I appreciate the time you have spent here, and thank you very much for attending this end-to-end QA with the QUASAR Multi-Purpose Body webinar. So if you have any questions about the MP body in itself, or if you want to ask anything about our other QA options, please do contact us at the www.modusqa.ca, and I look forward from hearing from you and discussing our quality assurance options. So thank you very much.